Order the regular meeting for the city of Livingston on August 20th, 2019. Can we go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
And remain standing.
Remain standing, please, for a moment of silence for our law enforcement, first responders, military men and women that lost their lives in the line of duty. And the most recent one was down in south, and he got laid to rest today. So you join me now. Thank you. Can we get roll call, please?
Councilmember Baptista,
Present.
Councilmember Aguilar,
Present.
Councilmember King,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia.
Present.
Let the record show Mayor Samra will be absent this evening.
So for closed session announcements, the city attorney, please.
Mayor Pro Tem, the closed session has been continued to after the regular meeting.
At this time, any changes to the agenda?
Just not changes, but some clarifications. I know some folks in the audience did recognize that there were some things missing on the agenda. For example, under citizen comments, the good news is it does say citizen comments, but the verbiage that's normally under that section, somehow when the agenda was getting put together, that got taken out, but there is still obviously the citizen comments section. Also, the heading consent calendar for items 2 through 10 is missing. The council can still take those items all together, just like the consent calendar, but at that point, we'll have our clerk read the items, and then if you could take them all together, unless pulled by either a council member or a member of the public, and there would be obviously public comment opportunity for those items as well.
Thank you. Any other changes? No? Good. So at this time, we'll do the awards presentations and proclamations. For number one, there'll be a presentation by PowerPoint by John Cicoli for the 2019-2020 Merced County Regional Homeless Plan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. John Sheckley, Management Analyst with the County of Merced. So the plan really came out of the governor's proposed budget in January. Part of his proposal was a $500 million block grant in order to help jurisdictions and counties and continuums of care across California address homelessness and just the increases that we're seeing throughout the state. Next slide.
It's not working.
Thank you.
For you.
So just as an overview of what we're going to discuss here is just some concepts associated with our regional plan, and we'd really like to emphasize the COC, the Continuum of Care, which is the HUD designated body responsible to deliver homeless services, coordinate, and plan. The county's involvement with that, as well as the cities, as a collaborative to make sure that we are addressing this county-wide and not just focusing on maybe jurisdictions that have been more visibly impacted. I think it's safe to say we've all been impacted in some way. Another component is going to be potential facilities to support the plan, and then some next steps, and of course any questions that y'all may have. Next slide, please. So our purpose and principles here were to get really good measurable objectives so that we could really track how well we're doing with our state and federal funds. That is something that we just transparently have been lacking on, that coordinated effort. There's a lot of efforts that go on here through the Human Service Agency for families, through behavioral health for individuals who are suffering from severe mental illness, from the continuum of care to address through ESG or consolidated application funds, permanent supportive housing, and so forth. We wanted to put with this new funding to make sure there were measurable objectives to track who's being awarded these funds and what the impact is in the community, as well as to determine really what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be funded a little more at a little higher increased level. These are also, we don't want to forget that they're client-focused best practices, so what works well for our clients here throughout the county. And these are also requirements of the new, it's called HAP, H-H-A-P, Homeless Housing Aid Program that the state passed in their latest budget. That actually increased the allocation from the governor's proposed $500 million to $650 million, and those allocations are being divided up between the 13 largest cities, the county of Merced, as well as the continuum of care for Merced County. Next slide. We had key objectives throughout our plan. We wanted to keep it simple. This is a very complex issue that has a lot of sectors that are involved, whether it's the law enforcement sector, the healthcare sector, just people in general, communities, jurisdictions in general with some of their departments that are being adversely affected by this. Our Parks Department would be another example. Roads having to clean up, our code enforcement. So we wanted to keep it simple, so we really focused on 4 different objectives, and that's outreach and engagement, making sure we're going out and making contact with individuals and or families, getting them in some data systems, directing them towards services, trying to develop a little more robust transitional housing, getting a navigation center potentially, and then moving people on into permanent supportive housing or permanent housing. So the second component after outreach engagement were those components I just mentioned: transitional housing, navigation center. Navigation center is basically a low barrier shelter. So a lot of shelters will allow people to stay for 6 months. There's not case managers there. The definition of a navigation center is really a low barrier shelter. So sobriety you can't use on premises, but sobriety isn't a prerequisite. There really are no prerequisites to going there. You obviously can be let go from the program if you're violent or creating some kind of other disturbance. That's mindful navigation centers, the 3 Ps, pets, possessions, and partners. Those are really barriers when you go out and do outreach. Hey, I've got a pet. Can my pet stay at the shelter? The answer is no. So, hey, I have a partner. I want to stay with them. Oftentimes the answer is no. Hey, I got a bunch of stuff here that I wanted to keep. And often the answer is you can't. So we're trying to overcome those barriers to accessing navigation centers and then putting wraparound services where we're connecting people to income, to housing, to behavioral health services. Along with navigation centers, something we'll go into is interim housing. We're calling it distributive housing or bridge housing. It's used now for respite care. It's funded through Dignity. Sutter Hospital has just funded a home in Los Banos to use as respite care. So as opposed to discharging people directly back onto the streets, you give them a place to have a little more robust recovery. You'll have case managers there. You try to get them document ready. You'll try to find housing. A third component is affordable housing and permanent supportive housing. The state is making a lot of funding available through No Place Like Home, through some of the other grants that are being provided, veteran housing homelessness prevention programs. We're trying to get our hands around how do we make sure we're capturing some of these pots of money, working with jurisdictions and cities who maybe have some subject matter expertise in this, and partnering as best we can. And then the fourth component is permanent housing, just meeting RENA goals, making sure we're building housing. That's the cause of a lot of homelessness, is just people can't afford. It's either affordability and availability. So if we can ramp up the permanent housing production, we think it would go a long way towards helping to alleviate this issue. And then the long-term supportive housing is really in regards to permanent supportive housing, having case managers. There's people who can function at a certain level, and how do you support them so they retain their housing and aren't falling back into homelessness? Next slide, please. So as we've crafted this plan, working with the Assembly Member's office, the jurisdictions, and your mayor was there, your chief of police has been at a meeting, as well as a lot of other electeds from jurisdictions throughout the county, as well as supportive service providers. A lot of system support started coming up. When we talk about just transparently, we don't have a very good grasp on what the services are in this community. Well, we have to get a better idea that we're never going to be able to have really a collaborative process that's outcome focused. So we're trying to, at this point, we're calling it resource mapping, identifying and categorizing all the funding for services, and then the need for collaboration. Law enforcement, they're not clinicians, so can we figure out a way to pair someone up with a clinician to get a system in place where as you're interfacing with individuals, that we can actually try to help connect them to services, develop a housing inventory. This has probably been one of our most challenging. The Housing Authority has allocated 150 housing choice vouchers to our coordinated entry system committee. We've probably filled about 60 of them. The fiscal year ends for the federal government on October 1st, so we're definitely underperforming. A lot of that challenge is identifying property owners that are willing to, number one, take your client, number two, take a housing choice voucher that's meeting a certain affordability threshold. So how can we develop a housing inventory so when we're engaging people, we have a place to put them through our continuum into permanent housing? The next two, the CES, the Coordinated Entry System, and Homeless Management Information System, it's really our data driving forces here. Coordinated entry prioritization based on length of time homelessness, based on vulnerability scores through a common questionnaire, and then getting that homeless management information system. This helps us to dispel some myths that people are coming from all over out of county. The last time we looked at it, we got numbers recently, it was about 88% or so from within the county was their last permanent zip code. We had 8 or 9% from out of county and about 2% from out of state. Even within the county, we can look at where people are coming from or how many people are becoming homeless in certain jurisdictions. And to be quite honest, people are concerned. As we're proposing things, hey, you're going to build a big navigation center. Is that going to become a magnet for people out of county? Is that going to be a magnet for people within the county from out of my jurisdiction? So a lot of these things, such as HMIS, can help us somewhat assure people that may potentially not be the case. And I say may because this is all new, and there's a certain amount of risk here. So we don't want to just discount that as, hey, this needs to happen. We need to accept a certain level of risk within reason and move forward with planning. And then implementing a homeless court. The City of Merced Police Department has identified the 25 most frequently arrested homeless individuals. So we actually were able to, we're looking at trying to fund a home in order to target those individuals, obviously disproportionately impacting law enforcement, impacting the community because a lot of them are staying at public parks, and seeing how we can get them from the streets into a place stabilized and then eventually moved on into permanent housing. So we're looking at a homeless court to help facilitate that. But not just a homeless court, it's not just okay, we realize you're homeless, this camping ordinance is going to be dismissed. There's going to be some supportive services around that. And lastly, enhanced case management. And I would say more structured case management. We know what case management looks like for HSA with families. We know what it looks like for behavioral health. There's other organizations that are providing case management, but we really like to have a standard. This is what case management is. If you have to go out there every day for the first month, you're going to have to just go out there every day for the first month to ensure that people are retaining their housing. This list has gotten longer as we've gone through the planning process, and I would anticipate it will continue to do so. Next slide. So some potential facilities. Next slide. So we're really going to look at the three most impacted jurisdictions. That's the City of Atwater, the City of Los Baños, and the City of Merced. And then there'll be another slide that talks about less impacted jurisdictions community-wide. So City of Atwater had a relatively modest point-in-time count annually. Every 2 years, HUD requires communities to go out and count the number of homeless people between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. It's very imprecise science. Our last point-in-time count for 2019 was 607 individuals counted within Merced County. Obviously, that number fluctuates. We had over 100 volunteers, though, and it is probably our best snapshot. So City of Atwater had about 14 individuals counted. So as solutions for this, we're looking at distributive housing model. That's basically renting a house within the community, something that we're asking individuals who are living homeless to actually transition to, using that house to home between three to 4 or 5 people per home. So we can really work with them, have a case manager on site, There's actually like resident assistances, individuals who are formerly homeless, who are functioning at a little higher level. They're there just to make phone calls to case managers in case something gets a little sideways. We also looked at a rehabilitation fund for 30 beds at a mobile home park. So these are 30 substandard housing units that, for relatively modest investment, could be brought up to standards. So we caught a lot of grief because we're proposing 36 to 39 beds, and the city of Atwater astutely reported, hey, your point-in-time count said 14 individuals. Are you going to be pulling people in from neighboring communities? And the answer is no. That wasn't the intention, but it was a very good question, and part of the reason we're coming here for feedback from the elected bodies as well as constituents. So the desire for a rehabilitation fund is to get substandard housing up to a habitability level where individuals who are at risk or homeless, preferably from that jurisdiction, would reside there. But that was good feedback, and it needs to be addressed. So the intention is not to develop anything outside the capacity of your current population. We estimated about a capital investment of about $100,000. Each of those units needed $5,000, maybe $10,000, but it's hard to say if we were to expand beyond that into some more dilapidated housing, what it would really take, what that program would look like. We're in very early preliminary stages of this, so it's hard to get a very good estimate, and we tried to keep it a little on the higher end. An annual operating budget, I would say, would probably be less than that. You would need at least the distributive houses are $75,000 to $100,000 each. If you did have rehabilitation beds of 30 beds, you would need a case manager or two, so probably closer to $300,000 as we refine these numbers. A total impact, 36 to 39 beds, if that's the direction that they decide to move on. Next slide, please. City of Los Banos had 47 individuals during the point-in-time count. That's exclusive of people who were sheltered at the time. So there were 12 or 13 individuals who had linkage through children that get hotel rooms. So through our CalWorks program, we're able to make sure families are not unsheltered. We're exploring a congregate shelter site, basically a shelter, an open berthing type shelter. There's one that we're modeling in Patterson that has about 15 bed. It's really a cognitive rehabilitation program, 6 to 9 month program, where at the end of that time, people are discharged through employment or some other, they're just more stable and able to be self-sufficient. Estimated capital investments about $500,000, and then an annual operating budget of about $600,000 for a total impact of 31 to 44 beds. Since this PowerPoint was created, there's actually been 2 distributive houses in Los Banos that have been stood up. So one will be targeting people who are living in encampments and obviously very visible and very impactful in the community, and the other one is going to be funded through Sutter Hospital for people who are discharging from the hospital, respite care. Next slide, please. City of Merced, obviously the most impacted jurisdiction. A little more than half of the homeless population on the point-in-time count resided in the city of Merced. The proposal is for a navigation center with 96 to 192 beds and the associated wraparound supportive services. The county has been the recipient of $7.5 million from Assemblymember Adam Gray to further this effort. So it's funding, at least for a capital side, which we're projecting to be at about $5.7 million. And an annual operating budget of about $2.5 million. We are going to go into an agreement with a consultant to take a look at that annual operating budget. How is this paid for? Again, that's feedback that we received as we've gone and presented this. So total impact here would be 96 to 192 beds. Next slide, please. There's a couple slides here that kind of detail out the navigation center. You can see the components, a dormitory style, outdoor sleeping area that can accommodate 30 people or so, shelter, a kennel for dogs, an outreach component, so you have co-located outreach workers there as well as the supportive service staff, an enterprise center to help people who maybe are at risk of homelessness, who maybe just need some deposit assistance, who maybe need a utility payment, something just to keep people housed, and then obviously administrative offices to support it. Next slide. This is just a little more detailed schematic of what it would look like, what the components are, how many offices, Again, this is something we're constantly reviewing. The restrooms in the dormitory area were split up. That way people from the outside would have access as well. And then there's a commercial kitchen as another component of it. Next slide, please. So communities countywide. Obviously, we talked about the 3 most impacted jurisdictions. This is impacting all communities within the county, incorporated or unincorporated. So we're proposing some type of distributive housing, 6 homes, whether it would be one in Livingston if that were to desire, one in Winton, somewhere we could distribute houses so we can really help with the localized problem. 18 to 27 beds based on 3 to 4.5 person occupancy. A rehabilitation fund, we think if you try to build affordable housing, it takes a long time, it's very complex, it takes a very specific skill set, it takes capital stacking, and then maybe in 4 years you got your units. We really believe a rehabilitation fund can more quickly produce units so we can more quickly address this. That's why this was a regional plan really eyeing the next 2 years as funding has become available through the state. Our estimated capital investment is about $200,000 on that, as well as an operating budget of around $750,000. Again, the homes themselves are probably $75,000 to $100,000 annually to operate. Food, rent, insurance, cable. And we're hoping for a total impact of 34 to 46 beds. Next slide, please. This is just a summary of what we reviewed today. We're hoping for a total impact of about 197 to 321 beds, a capital investment of about $6.5 million, which based on state funding and one-time funding, we feel we can get there. It's the operating expense that is really what we're looking at now as we go through and do the resource mapping, look at where the funding's coming in, look at what it's being used for, look at what funding maybe we haven't gone after, look at what we can do to offset costs through maybe behavioral health services or different types of services to just be more impactful in our community. And sustainability has been another topic of feedback that we receive everywhere we've gone. Next slide. So our next steps involve continuing to meet. We're meeting monthly with Adam Gray, CHP, jurisdictions, elected officials. We're bringing in people from outside for consulting just services to try to help us refine our plan. We plan to continue to meet. We plan to have a homeless summit likely scheduled for November 2nd. So it's going to be a Saturday. Plan to have some kind of op-ed piece just to inform people. The feedback we had at our last meeting with the assembly member, the elected officials, behavioral health director, HSA director. We asked one of the business community members who was participating, at the very end, they asked him, hey, do you have anything to say? He's like, yeah, the community doesn't know about this. Like, they don't know that these efforts are trying to be directed. I think they'd be reassured. So we're trying to figure out in these very early preliminary stages, how can we help message this and at least be informative? And one of those avenues should be on November 2nd, and when we will have more of a, hopefully by then this would have been adopted by the COC board. It would obviously be brought back to y'all for review as well. And then we'll just continue. The next funding round will be in March. We just released a notice of funding availability for $1 million. We're just trying to be as strategic as possible and as impactful as possible. There's been a lot of services that have been provided. There's a lot less people on the streets now because of those services, but I think we're really eyeing how do we become more impactful in the community where it's more visible and better outcomes for our clients. And with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them, take them back, get back to you if I don't have the answer.
All right. Thank you. At this time, is there any comments from the council?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions and comments. In regards to any prevention efforts or funding, has there been any funding identified for that sort of thing? What I'm thinking about is like those people that are about to be homeless, some kind of support to maintain their homes or apartments, specifically with families with children, stuff like that.
So families with children, there depends on income eligibility. So a lot of this is categorical and depending on income. So for families with linkage through income, it would be through HSA, their housing support program, which is really more for literally homeless, or their CalWorks homeless assistance program. So they do have prevention services through them. For individuals, it's a little harder. I would say this new round of funding, they actually want to limit homeless prevention services and really target literally homeless. We do have funding now through our outreach center, which was an initiative that the county helped stand up, where people are able to get that. It's also part of the community response. Catholic Charities provide some utility deposit. There's a LIHEAP program that's administered through the CAA, Community Action Agency, excuse me, too many acronyms. So yeah, there are services for prevention. There's also services that were funded for elderly, which they were considering people over 50 who have been homeless for a while is actually falling into that category due to chronic disease and some other issues that they may have. So there's some prevention services for veterans as well. A lot of the subpopulations within the group are covered. Single individuals that aren't falling in, say, transitional age youth or any of those, it's a little more challenging.
Kind of leads to my next question. In regards to like ongoing programs, current programs, I'm a social worker with Merced County CPS, like the HAP program you were talking about, the Homeless Assistance Program. Is there any funding going to go to expand those programs, type of programs, or any resources, anything like that?
The state programs? I believe
Like,
the
or locally, maybe like matching or anything like that?
Is there any local or matching funding that could be eligible to help out with current state programs? They can. We've been a little hesitant to actually be an applicant. Our Human Service Agency is actually the collaborative applicant, which is the administrative entity. Mm-hmm. I think the county runs a lot of good programs like the Housing Disability Advocacy Program and all of the family ones. You don't see many unsheltered families out here. So I don't think that's been identified as a need, but I can definitely bring it back to the group to enhance current county services, and then also the preventive services as well. That hasn't been a topic, a very vocal topic.
In regards to, I think it's excellent that this work is happening, these efforts. So is there going to be a specific agency taking the lead in regards to like conducting assessments, identifying those in need? Or is it, obviously it's going to be a multi-agency operation, but are you guys looking at a specific agency?
Yes and no. So there's access points throughout the county. You want to have well-advertised access points to make sure it's accessible for everyone so you can assess, prioritize, and then refer. So the Human Service Agency is one access point. We have an outreach center on Childs and B. That is another access point. Bethel Community Church is an access point. The D Street Shelter / Navigation Center is another access point. So we tried with the outreach center to have a single access point where everyone could come and be assessed. There would be co-located services, and it just didn't work well. Mm-hmm. People they have their programs, they're very small programs, they're not funded well. You ask them to come there for a day, they're not doing their other business. We're really trying to work on communicating and collaborating, and that's also when you looked at the system supports, the coordinated entry system, that's really, I think, what you're getting after is no matter where they come into the system, if they're being assessed with the same assessment, we can prioritize them based on that assessment and then do referrals through coordinated entry. So right now that's happening weekly. It happens on Wednesdays where there's 14 or 15 participants from the funded organization. That's also a requirement of all this funding. So if you are being funded and you're not participating in this, well, we have to do a better job of motivating people. No, we haven't talked about having a specific agency responsible for it. The Community Action Agency receives funding through the Continuum of Care Consolidated application to act as the HMIS lead, so they provide training and make sure that everything's kind of standardized going forward. But no, there hasn't been conversation about just a single organization overall responsible. Any organization that's funded through these revenue streams must participate.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. Just to get a little bit more clarification, you do have the Enterprise Center and the outreach.
Mm-hmm.
I understood it to be one of the same. And it mentions that you have intervention services, and that was including like preventive kinds of services like utilities not being shut off so they can remain in their homes. But when I think of intervention, I'm thinking of help for your clients, like with mental health. And I heard you mention many of the agencies you're working with, and it sounds like which is great, the more help the better. There's a duplication of efforts among the counties, and everybody's hands are needed here. But again, you have you know, an outreach center, your enterprise center, almost being utilized as for the same kinds of services. Am I far off on that?
I wouldn't say you're far off. In my opinion, it's muddled the message of what a navigation center is by putting an enterprise center there. Because now you are creating kind of a single access point for people who are at risk. So the purpose of the enterprise center would be to address the at-risk. What, you know, the utility assistance, the rental assistance, very short term. People are able to function but just hit a rough spot and just need a little bit of help to stay within their house. So pay or quit notice, hey, I just need help for this month, or I'm out. Hey, I got a $1,000 utility bill, what can you do for me? I think that's the purpose of the enterprise center for people who maybe have lost a job. So there would be some crossover. A lot of people who stay at the shelter are actually employed. They just don't make enough money to get a house. They don't have 3 times the income in order to get it. So maybe help them get a better job or a better career. So the outreach component that you're seeing on that map is really the supportive services side. So an outreach worker is going to go out, they would engage people, but they also do some case management and some housing navigation. So the enterprise center would be more at risk. The outreach component that's there is going to be the co-located Sierra Saving Graces, the people who are providing those services who are funded through COC. That's one of the complications with the outreach center. Where does that funding come from? Right now, a lot of these services are provided by Catholic Charities. They have a food pantry, they have a clothing locker, those types of services, and we're still, again, in these early stages of formulating how that stays in there, because those services are still needed. But does it make sense to have it as a component of a navigation center, which is a program, which is a low barrier shelter to get people out of encampments and off the street in there? So it's muddled the message. It's a good question.
Another question for you. You're talking about the funding that you're receiving. Now, does it have anything with how you allocate the funds to your prospective clients? Where I'm getting at is I know you mentioned veterans. You know, are you working with Veterans Affairs to see where is there a hierarchy of criteria where people come in, I'm homeless, they need shelter, but does the funding have any weight on who gets to come in?
So we have 2 providers for veterans. One is a HUD-VASH, so that's a housing program similar to a housing choice voucher. And then we have San Joaquin Valley Veterans, which is a subsidiary of WestCare. Those programs are funded outside of us, or the COC or any of those. They're participants with the COC. Basically, our job would be to do the assessment and then the referral. Hey, this is a subpopulation. This is a veteran. It's the same thing for like victims of domestic violence. We can do an assessment. If someone declares that, we would put them over towards the Valley Crisis Center. So the Valley Crisis Center has applied for funding, but the veteran component we do not, other than just coordinate. They do not get any funding from us.
So no housing for veterans in Merced County. They have to go outside. You'll refer them out?
No, ma'am. We can use just like a housing choice voucher. So they actually have really good outcomes, and we're working on a master homeless veteran list, which is one of the best practices for addressing it. We had it at one point down to about 9 veterans. So we have 60, 75 HUD-VASH vouchers that are for this county. So just like a housing choice voucher, we would identify that veteran, bring that veteran in, determine eligibility for that program. If they have eligibility, they have 2 social workers and a housing navigator that would find them a unit of their choosing within Merced County. So we do have housing. What we don't have here is any kind of veteran-specific shelter. So Fresno has a couple veteran-specific shelter. We do not have that at this point. There is an initiative through Veteran Housing Homeless Program. That's a CalVet HCD administered program. We had a call with them 2 weeks ago to see if we could potentially get 10 units of transitional housing. So people, if they choose not to go to the shelter, they basically languish on the street until we find them a spot. So we don't have any kind of transitional housing for them.
Again, I had a question in there. Is there any weight on the amount of funding you get from specific sources to who is eligible?
No, this has all been through an RFP process. So the state will dictate the eligible activities, and then the COC board can prioritize what activities they want. So for example, we just allocated $200,000 to Healthy House for individuals who are 50 or over, but it's really through a rated and ranked RFP. So the RFP is released. We just released one yesterday. The activities are going to be navigation center, rental assistance. The participants at that workshop will apply. Based on that application, it's going to be scored and then presented to the COC board. And depending on what prioritizations they want to make on the programs, it comes down to having a nice grant writer. There's a lot of factors that could affect it. The state has prioritized transitional age youth. They've mandated a certain set aside. So the last round of funding was a 5% set aside for transitional age youth. This next round of funding is a 7% set aside for transitional age youth. I think the state is really prioritizing by mandating, hey, we don't want to look at too much for people who are at risk. The state is really prioritizing chronically homeless individuals, people who have been on the street the longest and are scoring the highest on the vulnerability scores. So that's who they're prioritizing. And through our coordinated entry, when we're making referrals to projects, it has to be based on that criteria. So the prioritization is somewhat implied in the process. Would you like to see a certain subpopulation? I mean, I can bring that back as well. Hey, some of the feedback was that, what are you doing for, some of the feedback we got is, hey, you guys have this nice plan. Where are you addressing the root causes? I thought that was a really valid question. Like, and this is 10,000 feet. But it was good feedback, and it had good conversation to bring back to the group. Like, hey, what are we doing about sobering centers or drug rehabilitation? What can we do about some feedback? There's 5 people in Los Banos who are disproportionately affecting our community because they have behavioral health problems and mental illness. What are you doing? It's a great question. What are you doing? What are we doing? So if there is a subpopulation that you think would warrant some extra consideration, definitely would love to hear it. And I have my cards over there. If any of you have feedback that you'd like to provide offline, definitely please let me know.
Thank you. That information would be great, because I know your overall goal is to make them self-sufficient.
Absolutely. And to make sure that the needs of the community, I'm guilty, I'm not in Livingston that often. So who better to tell us what Livingston may need than residents here?
Any other questions or comments? Is there any comments now from the public?
Well, I appreciate your time. And hey.
Just remember, you got a 3-minute comment, and state your name and your address, please, for the record.
Catherine Shaw Rodriguez, P.O. Box 163. 2 questions. As you're going through this process, will you be coming back with another presentation on the results of the process that you're going through right now? Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, I was hoping you could clarify something for me. I've been hearing that Health and Human Services is giving out these vouchers to the homeless under certain circumstances, and that some of these are being used at the Motel 6 here in Livingston. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. Is that the same program? Is it a different program? Is it a different funding? And approximately how many are being housed at the Motel 6?
Thank you. So yeah, we would like to come back with the finalized plan, present it to the city council. That's really a 2-step process. Hey, this is kind of where we're going. I know some of the council has been involved in the planning, make sure that the broader council is aware of it, but also an opportunity to provide feedback if anything needs to be incorporated in the plan, and then we would be bringing a plan back to you. Right now, it's like a 7-page document that's got draft written all over it. The speed of this has been glacial at some times and then full steam ahead at others. So it's hard to say when that would be. Just trying to be thoughtful and incorporate everybody. But yeah, the intention would be to bring something back to the council I mean, just so you could support it or not. I mean, we would love you to support it and would value that support, but we also want to make sure we're addressing what the city of Livingston envisions as their, for their role in this. Health and Human Services does have vouchers for eligible clients, linkage through a dependent age child, and limited income. They do provide, it's called temporary homeless assistance. It's up to 16 days stays for that population who has children. And my understanding, and this week is the first time I was informed of this, but I'm not surprised, is that yes, there's very few hotels that they use or motels that they use. I believe one's in Merced, Atwater, and one in Livingston. I don't know how many have been housed, and I can absolutely bring that information back. I'd be happy to come back at your next meeting and break that down, or even invite someone from that department who's going to be much more well-steeped in what, if you've worked for the county, those programs are pretty complex. But I could absolutely request that someone come back and talk about that, and the numbers for sure.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the public? So I'll close comments or questions from the public now, and then we'll move on to announcements and reports. Supervisor Espinoza.
Good evening, Council. I want to make sure that people hear me at home. Well, first of all, before I start, I want to thank the police chief, Ruben Chavez. The other day, he was nice to give my younger son, he's almost 10, and myself a tour of the police department. My son was all excited, and he gave us a good tour, and we were able to see some videos on how the cameras are, the officers' cameras in their chest record, when they pull over somebody, and then it moves. He was excited with the cameras and how they pull over somebody. So, at the end, everybody was so nice in the office, but I was able to bring him a couple bags of peaches, and so I hope that we're able to bring some more peaches before the end of the season. So. Let me start off also too on we were well, I'm glad to let you know that on Thursday, no, I'm sorry, the 28th, not this week, but next week, the 28th of this month, Merced County will have a ceremony to recognize Merced County Health Department, one of the few health departments that is accredited by the state of California, at 2 to 5 p.m. and everyone is welcome to attend that ceremony. So we're proud of our health department, which is they had to go through a strict rules from the state to get accredited for that. So also I attended a ceremonial sidewalk of the future fire station in Los Banos, along with Cal Fire here. But I think they made it a little bit hot that day. It was about 104 degrees out there. So, but it was good. Los Banos was able to get, actually Ana Caballero, our state senator, and Adam Gray were able to obtain a $5 million grant from the state for that new fire station and emergency operations center on the west side. So the future site, and hopefully will be pretty soon, they'll have a break-in of the site. So the MCAG, Merced County Association of Governments meeting was canceled last week due to other conflicts. So it was canceled, and the next meeting will be in the city of Augustine, and we'll be discussing the composition of the MCAG board of directors, where 5 directors. MCAG is comprised of 5 board of directors, 5 board of supervisors, and 1 member from each city. So some of the city members want to reduce the board of supervisors votes from 5 to 3. So that will be, instead of 9 directors, 11 directors, it'll be 9. So we'll see how that goes. And also too, I put on there to hopefully change the the time of the board meetings from 3 o'clock to 4 or 5, so that way more members of the community are able to attend the meetings as well. And also, I wasn't able to attend, but UC Merced had its 2020 project, the second phase grand opening this last week, and it's $1.3 billion investment in our county, and the kids are excited. They're going full force, and I think if anybody has a chance to stop by UC Merced, it's looking beautiful, and it's enhancing our county. I also met with Victor Griego, a water education for Latinos nonprofit out of LA that's trying to educate a lot of the elected officials from all over California in regards to water, how important it is for all of us to make sure that we work together throughout the state on the issues of water, which is, with the California Aqueduct and all the dams and all that, make sure we work instead of fighting, the South with the North in regards to water, and learn about water as well. And also, too, we talked about we're going to have a meeting on October 9th with Senator Ana Caballero in regards to educate a public forum to educate more Latino leaders from the Central Valley in her district. So as many as elected officials, we'll be sending out letters to electeds. That includes council members, school board members, and water district members as well. And with that, then we'll, that way the electeds can go back into their respective cities and educate the public as well. So the more knowledge for electeds, the better. And so the draft is, the county sent a draft revenue sharing agreement to the city, and I know that the city has it, and hopefully with minor issues, we'll be able to have a revenue sharing agreement where the city will be able to work on the general plan and be able to grow, because right now we're almost at the limits, and hopefully finally since 2008, we're the only city that doesn't have, Livingston is the only city that doesn't have I said we because I live here, so, and since when I was mayor, I was fighting for the new revenue sharing agreement as well, so I've been there 3 years and still going on, and it was contentious during the last election, and so Livingston deserves a fair revenue sharing. So with that, I will ask if anybody has any questions from the public or the council. Be glad to answer them if I can. Any questions? Thank you very much. Council? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll be moving on to city staff and announcements and reports. Whoever wants to go first.
Good evening, everyone. I just have a few quick things that I thought I would update you guys with, and ladies. We have our soccer opening ceremonies this Friday at 7 o'clock. I invite you all to come out and see all 450 kids and their coaches out on the field. It's going to be a great time for everyone. Also, this Thursday is our Rec Commission meeting at 6 o'clock. And following that, we have a Livingston Teen Advisory Council workshop. And we're inviting all teens that are interested in being a part of the Teen Advisory Council to come to this meeting. This meeting will let them know what their responsibilities would be should they get the position, what's expected of them, and the kinds of projects that we'll be taking on. So if you know somebody or anybody out there is interested, we'd love to have you here Thursday night at 7 o'clock. And I just want to give a special thank you to Clara and Jose Moran, who are helping me, there he is hiding, put this together. You know, they both are teachers over at the high school, and they're a great influence over there, and we're just really blessed to have them be a part of this. Also, the Sweet Potato Festival is coming up. So we're going to be in need of volunteers, and we're also looking for sponsors. I've sent you guys an email this week, so hopefully you can forward that on to somebody you know. The Lucha Libres will be back this year. We have Mike Hammer and the Nails, and then our own Cynthia Huddleston Bennett will be here singing her jazz and blues. So we have a lot more entertainment coming, and hopefully at the next meeting I can update you with that. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a couple questions. Regarding the Sweet Potato Festival,
Yes.
are we having anything, any events with beer tasting?
Yes, we are. Would you like to talk about that? Yes, we have. We are going to be having a beer tasting event. The Rec Commission is sponsoring it, and the funds that are raised from that event is hopefully going to be enough to buy new baseball equipment for the kids. So we invite you to come out. It's $20 in advance or $25 at the door, and you guys are going to have a great time. Sample? Yes, and you'll get a commemorative sampling cup and a drawing and a chance to win a giant snack basket that will go with your beer tasting. Okay.
I got a question. Opening ceremonies, where is that going to be held for soccer?
At the Max Foster Sports Complex.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. And I want to thank you, Supervisor. You have a very nice young man. And I know there's a T6 that might be coming up, and I know you know some CAL FIRE folks in case you want to do a tour over there and give them a little ride or something like that. I think you get a hold of some of those folks over there. Just a quick presentation. If I get the lights out, please. I need you. So I want to commend the Recreation, Jackie and Tony and Nita. They would do a great job with the youth programs here, and we love partnering with them. One of the things that they put together was a Junior Ranger program, and they took about 60 kids, almost to every park in the city. It got a little hot, so they didn't hit them all, but we had a chance to visit all the parks and talk about some of the resources and some of the opportunities the parks have to offer for the kids. I think we took a group picture almost every park, but it was just a great time.
No?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. And as a result of their initiation of this program, they took all the kids to Yosemite National Park and worked out with the Parks Department up there, and actually got a chance to see some neat things over there and doing a tour and a hike, and then they all got sworn in as Junior Rangers. So that was a lot of fun. Always fun to go to Yosemite Park, which is in our backyard. And this is kind of a group shot after they met one of the rangers who talked about some of the Native American history within the valley. And then some of the folks, and always our council member came to assist, and a lot of fun with all the folks. And along with this trip, our explorers came to help out as chaperones. I introduced the officers here in our council meeting a while ago, and now they've completed their training, and they're actually operational now on the bikes. And there's a couple of pictures from the training. Gay Johnson, he wasn't trained that bike. He kind of just tried it on for size, but anyways, they're out and about. They're patrolling the city, and they are actually on duty and taking calls for service and riding all over the city. So, National Out last August. I want to thank all the folks that helped out. I want to thank Fire, Brian. I want to thank the volunteer firefighters. We had a chance to have a good time, bring the community together, and share some hot dogs and meet some folks. There's the amount of Joe Cruz and Lobo out there right around. CHP was out there. Our explorers, again, they helped out cooking and doing some face painting. Great. And cooking, and then some at the end of the night. Again, I want to thank all of the elected officials that came to support the event, and Supervisor for being there, and some of the corporals out there. Just a fun time, and again, something to look forward to for next year. I mentioned this a couple of council meetings ago. We had a chance to meet with Senator Ana Caballero to talk about some of the things that we can try to do to come together to impact illegal fireworks. And there was some creative ideas that came about, and she's going to have an opportunity she'll be serving on the budget committee next year, and serve some things that I think she was going to be able to do from that position. But it was great to talk about it, and with the district attorney and the Chief Goodwin from Merced PD, they're all on the same page, and it's something that we need to do as a community, as a collaborative county, to come together and see if we come up with creative ideas to impact illegal fireworks. They impact our community so much. Last weekend, our explorers went out down to Laguna Seca and again directed traffic for the historic car races for the 4 days that they were down there. And if you guys haven't been there, it's a historic racetrack, and they've got all the old cars there, and they're actually the ones responsible around the track directing traffic, and they do a great job. And they were very badly needed. There was a couple of posts that did not show up, and so when that happens, it puts a little extra burden on our kids, and they do a great job. They step up to the plate and they take care of business. Very hot? Okay. Yep, it gets hot up there. Little group picture with one of the race cars, a historic race car, and that was it. So that's it from the police department for last month, so I'll be happy to answer any questions. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tony Avina, Public Works Superintendent. We'll be going over the Public Works Activities Report for August and July, for July and August. Here we have some of our part-time staff that's been diligently working out on the LMDs. Here's a video of one of our part-time seasonal staff we've hired. As you see, we have about 52 LMDs, and it's pretty time-consuming when we're a little short-handed. But we're trying to keep up, especially right now during the hot season. And we have hired a couple of seasonal part-time employees, and we're in the process of trying to get another one here, hopefully in the next week. Because of the CVOC staff that we had for the last 4 years, budgeting cost from the state was cut for them, so we had the CVOC program for about 4 years. Recently, it just came to a standstill, so our part-time staff's trying to keep up. We do bring on the fire crew from Mount Bullion to help out on the LMDs, because we have quite a few LMDs throughout the Livingston. Also, we've been working on a few recreational benches for some of the parks. This is over at the Max Foster, our operations crew, which is the wastewater guys. They're pretty savvy in a lot of things. So because we are shorthanded in our LMDs and parks, we bring in the guys to help us out a little bit to form some slabs. And after the slabs, we bring in, this is over at Arcalian. They're around the walkway paths that was put in over at the Arcalian Park. Also, these benches recently put in, as soon as we get a chance, our weekend cement crew will be working around the walk paths to go to these benches. And these are the operations crew that was working on those cement pads. These were 4 of the benches that were put in over in the area where the parents and other kids are able to watch their siblings or their kids. And because of the way we put them in the evenings, it gets great shade. So this park is great for the kids, but it also has a lot of shade. And now with new benches that were put in, the families are able to enjoy their kids. This is over in the ADA project at 8th and Virginia. Our cement crew's been working pretty hard. We work with them, with our staff, our street staff. They do a lot of the demolition, and then our cement crew comes in and does a lot of the forming, and then they do all the pouring and then afterwards we come in and do a hot mix. So in combination with them and our crew, we're really doing a lot all over town. This is our new employee, Jose Lara. He is a new addition to the operations team, which is a wastewater. And he comes in from the local area. He was raised around Livingston. His family is in Livingston. He does live in Atwater, but he came to us with very good experience in the wastewater. So he's a big asset to the city right now, and he's only been here for about a month. So we're glad to have him. Here we have the Main Street crack sealing project that we've done from about F Street all the way to Peach on Main. The crews have been working. Probably in about 2 days, we were able to get that whole section right before the high school started. So here we have a video of the process of the crack sealing, which is going to hopefully extend the life of some of our streets. It is a lengthy process. The guys have to actually blow all the cracks out in front of this, and then right behind the sealer material is put on every single one of those cracks to try to prolong our streets. And the process is these blocks come in pretty heavy blocks, and they're put in while the guys are doing crack sealing. A couple other guys will put in the material, and it gets in pretty high temperatures, melts it, and then the slurry is what poured onto the street. And there's a few things going on at the wastewater plant, so I'll have Tommy, our wastewater guy, talk to you a little bit.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. So here's at the wastewater treatment plant. You can see one of our solar drying beds. This one here has been cleaned recently, but you can see just on the upper side of it, it's been slurried, repaired, so none of those biosolids actually seep into the ground and affect the water table, groundwater. And that's just maintenance that's required as operations and also for a permit. There's after a long time of usage and running tractors in there, cleaning it out. Sometimes the degradation of the bed, it's just a sandcrete in there, so it tends to wear. It's not super durable, but it does keep, the solids from seeping into the ground. But that's how it looks when it's cleaned and some of the problems that happens. There is roughly, I think, 12 yards of slurry that we did do some repairs with. Just putting it down and leveling it out. That is a full solids drying bed right there. That is biosolids. It's basically organic decomposing matter that's wasted from the system. It's just solids concentration. I believe this one here is a video. There's one of our operators from the operations department. And what he's doing is you can see the top of the solids there is crusted over because there's solar drying beds. They just dry from the heat from the sun. So there he's using a backhoe, and what he's doing is just mixing it up to bring the water back to the top so we could get some evaporation and just increase the dry time. There's part of the removal. You can see they've taken it out as it dries off. What we do is we'll let it dry as much possible there, and then we'll move it to a storage pad in the facility. So,
Good job, Tommy. And then we follow up with a wireless LED crosswalks installed. It's a Measure V project. Also, this is over in the area of the Briarwood and F Street over by the newer middle school. These solar lights are very, very visible during the day and night. As soon as the kids are going to cross up crosswalks, it'll light up the whole length of the street, very bright. And it also has some of the operators installing the lights. It's a lengthy process. There's a special drill that needs to be drilled into the street to install the lights. Then we have the signage is also lit up, so every time any kid or a parent presses the button, the whole light on the sign comes up and the whole crosswalk lights up for about a length of 2 minutes. And until the kid crosses, if there's another kid crossing, they'll hit the button and it'll light up again. So these were installed just recently, right before school started at the middle school. And that's about it. Any questions? Good. Any questions for the public?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next in line, anybody else?
Would be me. All right.
Okay, we'll be moving on to city manager announcements and reports.
Yes, Honorable Mayor Pro Tem and Council and esteemed public, there's a few items that I want to cover today. The first is, you might recall that we tag team with the MCAG to really, get Caltrans to authorize some funding for the northbound 99 widening. And so that actually did hit. We did get that funding. And so there's going to be a groundbreaking, and all of you, of course, are invited. The date that they kind of threw around right now is October 29th at 10 a.m. It'll be right next to the Motel 6. And we actually asked Motel 6 if we can use their parking lot and that little cul-de-sac area in there, and they said yes. So again, the date is October 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. Hopefully the majority of our council, if not all, can make it out there. And there'll be representatives from throughout the county, and then of course Caltrans and some other elected officials. So if you can make it, please jot it down on your calendar. The next thing is, Foster Farms has been decommissioning about the 100 acres, the industrial wastewater plant behind Foster Farms for a while now. We thought that it was only going to take about 5 years, but of course, over time, they've actually drained the ponds. They've been planting some crops in there to take out the nitrogen and some of the salts, and they continue to monitor that. And it's just taking a lot longer than anticipated. And so as they continue to monitor those ponds and be acceptable by the state, then they'll basically turn all that over back to the city. But at this point, I think we're still a few years out. The next thing is, we do have a job fair coming up. As you know, we had our groundbreaking not too long ago with Emerald Textile Services, which is the industrial laundry service that is opening the doors here in Livingston. They have a soft opening sometime in mid-September. There's going to be about a little over 250 jobs that will be available. And so we have, let's see here. So we're partnering with them, and so we're going to be hosting here in the chambers and possibly the conference room some job fairs so they can do interviews, take applications. So currently we have a stack of applications at City Hall. Anyone who's interested or knows of somebody that would like to apply for one of those jobs, they can come in, pick up the application. And there is a email and address and where they can drop it off. But if not, August the 23rd and August 6th, here between 10 and 3 p.m., there's going to be basically a job fair. So spread, if you want to share that, go ahead. September 6th and the 23rd. So they're both Fridays. August? Sorry. Yeah, so August the 23rd and September 6th, okay? They're both Fridays. And then lastly, from 10 to 3 p.m. And if you have further questions, you can feel free to call us here at City Hall, and we're more than happy to give you more details. I know we posted it. There's going to be a flyer in the utility bills that's going to be going out So you can see it there, or you can call City Hall and we'll provide you with additional details. Lastly, I wanted to talk about the Measure V regional funding. We actually, one of the things that we're always constantly looking at, into the future and trying to avoid potential, traffic issues, kind of like we've experienced at Winton Parkway. So as we're looking at developing and having some commercial development on Hammond and Campbell, rather than doing the improvements in stages, what we would like to do is, fully build it out, and then that way we avoid, congestion issues down the road and interrupting a lot of the businesses and just tearing up a road again and so forth and so on. So with the assistance of our council and supervisor and me advocating, we were able to get about $1 million that's going to go towards the improvements of that intersection off of Campbell and Hammond. So we're looking forward to that, because one of the first projects that's going to break ground over there is going to be ARCO, AMPM, and then we're also working with a major truck stop that's about 10 acres. I can't disclose the name at this point, but we are currently looking at their plans, talking to them, and so there is some activity happening in that neck of the woods. And that is it, unless you guys have any questions for me. Thank you very much, Council.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
First, could we get an update on the electric cart grant, if that was successful, and when can we expect that for the fire department?
Yes, so we applied for a grant under the Air Pollution Control District, and as of right now, I don't know the exact turnaround in terms of when we're going to be notified, but we've been very successful in the past. We've received numerous vehicles. The last go around, we received 3 different vehicles. And Chief, have you heard anything about when we might get a turnaround on the submission?
No, our contact over there, we submitted what we had for our 3 vehicles, and he said he'd take it from there. So I would say we should hear within the next month or so for sure.
Yeah. So as soon as we hear, I know you're anxious to use that bad boy. So.
Another question real quick. In regards, I know there's been a lot of opinions regarding the roundabout. Could you please provide kind of a little bit of a history and background in regards to how that came about, and just to explain to our public out there that, there's some resistance in accepting the roundabout?
Sure. Very valid. Thank you very much. And you guys are all lucky because you guys were not here. But back in 2012, we as a municipality decided that we wanted to look at the entire city comprehensively and where we can make improvements and how can we, not only beautify but address congestion issues, make the community a more walkable community, and then looking at enhancing our downtown and looking at all the different improvements. So we were successful in getting the northern chapter of New Urbanists, which was a group of about 35 professionals from across real estate, different types of engineers, to planners, you name it. We had them all. And they all donated their time, and they were here for a whole week. And there was a lot of city public participation from the businesses, from the residents, and just everybody in general. And so during this whole week and all these workshops, pretty much everything was talked about. And from there, we actually got a grant. They actually, if you look at what they produced about a $250,000 document, and with all the time and effort from all these professionals. From that, we actually applied for another grant that we received, and that grant we actually hired Nelson Nygaard. Nelson Nygaard is basically another engineering firm, and they were the ones tasked to look at circulation, and everything was brought up as it relates to roundabouts in order to go after some money under CMAQ, which is the Congestion Mitigation and Quality Grant that's available to us continuously. And the three areas that they outlined for roundabouts, which is one of those that qualifies, is Main and B, Briarwood and B, and Winton and B. So, of course, we only got sufficient, we applied for the grant, we only got enough for one. And that one was programmed back in 2013, and then by the time you fill everything out and you get the funding and get all the funding that you need, it was pushed to this year. And that money is only, it cannot be moved to the next roundabout on B in Briarwood or Winton. It has to be used on that. And funding that has already been expended on that from the city side, basically a lot of that money has to be paid back if we do not go forward with the project. We did a mock roundabout, and that was an idea from us, from staff, because we wanted to, you know, just kind of everybody, you know, think about and get questions, because we want people to be engaged, ask questions, have them, you know, participate in one way or another. And so we received some, you know, good comments and great and not so good comments, but that's democracy. That's what we want. We want to hear from folks and so forth and so on. So the actual construction of the roundabout has already started. We're trying to have the least impact possible to the businesses and also traffic. So the actual traffic control plan that's in place right now, starting tomorrow, they're gonna, the southbound traffic is gonna be funneled through the alleyway, and there'll be proper signage and so forth. And then the northbound, there will be one lane open for northbound, and so folks will go northbound. But there will be a moment in time where they actually have to work on the actual roundabout in the core, and I'm hoping that it doesn't take more than 2.5 weeks to get that done, that actually completed and done. Anything you want to add, Chief? I know you got a nice video from Minnesota that you put up.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Jose and I were out there today, and I think the public can be very impressed. You could see the work they're doing, and they're actually expanding the intersection a lot larger than what it is now. So I think that's going to improve it. And, you know, roundabouts have been shown to be very, very efficient and effective in moving traffic. And we did, the Anthony Chavarria, our Public Works Director, did put a video on the website that shows and we're not going to spend the money to make one if you got one on YouTube, direct you to the YouTube site for Minnesota. The guy has a funny accent, but if you want to go down roundabout, you know, it shows you how to safely navigate a roundabout if you're not familiar with them. And it's a very similar roundabout that they show, how you approach it, where to look, things like that, especially for our pedestrians that have to cross. They do have areas that are going to be designated for pedestrian crossing, which is going to provide a safe route for them to cross. But it's a great video, so I'd encourage anybody that wants to check out the video and look at that. So,
Thank you. Of course, I was mayor back then when 7 years ago when you know, we started it, and we had not just a roundabout, but before we fixed downtown, we had laid out the plans, and we had you know, even pallets and different stuff to show, because we went to diagonal parking and, you know, of course the roundabout. And I've been waiting and asking for the roundabout funds from MCAG when it was going to be here. It's supposed to be here 2 years ago, so it's been delayed. And but just to, you know, say that we had much public input back then, and then 2 years ago also when Alex McKay, our council member, he brought it back for much more discussion. And you know, people have been complaining about it on Facebook, but it's not the true exact you know, what we had out there. You know, the last couple of weeks, it's not going to look just like that. It's going to be, I think, a lot better. But once it's here, you know, we got safety advice from fire and different organizations saying how safe they are, you know, all across America and other countries. You know, they're everywhere. So I think it's you know, just let let it be finished, and hopefully it'll take some time for people to get used to it. And Modesto, different cities up north of Lodi, and I've seen the roundabouts. I go to another bank on my way home, and from when I go up north in Lodi, and then there's actually Galt. There's a couple of them right there, and they're nice. People go around there fast and no issues. So I just want to state that. I know people with social media right now, something pops up and everybody's commenting on it. And so, but I think it's going to turn out great. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to city council member announcements and reports. Council member Bautista.
I just have one announcement. I work on I don't work, I volunteer for the Livingston Youth Football Program, and I'm just gonna throw out an invitation for the public and council members to come out and check out a home game. It's the Pop Warner Livingston Youth Wolves. We will be having 5 home games. They are back every Saturday from September 7th all the way up until October 5th. So I am the gatekeeper. I've been the gatekeeper for maybe 14 years. So I can see your faces at the gate. It does cost some admission because we are a nonprofit organization. But if I do see you, I will give you a discount on our Wolfpack nachos, or I try to, people just come for the food. Plus they watch the youth play. It's really great. I mean, they learn a lot of skills, sportsmanship, other than, just the football. So again, I just want to invite council members, the public to come out and watch our youth play at our home stadium in Livingston High School. Okay, thank you.
What time are the games?
We have 4 divisions. We have a rookies division, a peewees, a junior varsity, and a varsity. Game times at our home field is 1, 3, 5, and 7. 1, 3, 5, and 7. Again, those dates are going to run from September 7th all the way to October 5th, every Saturday. We are there all day.
Thank you. Council member Aguilar.
Yes, just to follow up what our supervisor stated, our MCAG meeting did get canceled. Our next scheduled meeting is September 19th at 3 p.m. at the City of Gustine. A couple important items such as the composition of the board will be discussed, and also the times, moving them from 3 to a later evening time. I'll be attending the Parks and Recs Commission meeting this Thursday at 6 p.m. Let me see what else. I also want to say thank you to our supervisor for supporting our efforts in obtaining that $1 million from MCAG. So it was a nice effort advocating, so I appreciate it. I'm also going to be attending the National Fire Academy. I got accepted for the Volunteer Incentive Program for the Community Risk Reduction class. I have a question, our police chief. I know you did a study, or you did presentation or something like that regarding emergency preparedness maybe a year ago, or do you recall?
I think the city contracted, 2017, we had a new plan, emergency operations plan for the city, if that's what you're referring to. The one before that was 2011, and we updated it in 2017.
Is there any way we could get a copy of that?
Sure.
And part of the class is to conduct a risk assessment for our city. So that'll probably help me out.
Sounds like you're doing some work, some hard work.
Yes,
All right,
it's
good.
been a very complicated process, but I'm happy to do it. All right, that's it.
Thank you. Council member King.
I got nothing to report.
Thank you. So we'll be moving on to mayor announcements and reports, and at this time, I do not have anything to report.
And Mayor Pro Tem, if I could jump in here. Again, as I mentioned previously in the beginning of the meeting, the citizen comments section, it does have, at least it has citizen comments. but I think that it'd be a good idea for our clerk to read the verbiage that's normally on the agenda describing what citizen comments is for.
Under citizen comments, this section of the agenda allows members of the public to address the city council on any item not otherwise on the agenda. Members of the public, when recognized by the mayor, should come forward to the lectern and identify themselves. Comments are normally limited to 3 minutes. In accordance with the state open meeting laws, no action will be taken by the city council this evening. For items which are on the agenda this evening, members of the public will be provided an opportunity to address the city council as each item is brought up for discussion.
Thank you. We will now open it up for public comments at this time. Just come forward. And a reminder, it's limited to 3 minutes, and state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name is Raquel White, 8281, P.O. Box 8281, Fresno, California. Again, my name is Raquel White. I am the Central Regional Compliance Manager for Construction Industry Force Account Council, also known as CFAC. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to ensuring state and local governments' compliance with the California Public Contract Code. Currently, the city of Livingston is a general law city with a bid threshold of $5,000. This means that all public projects valued at more than $5,000 must be competitively bid and awarded to the lowest responsive bidder. The bid threshold does not give the city much leeway to self-perform or execute simplified contracts on small projects. However, the city does have an option to increase this threshold and give itself more leniency in regards to utilizing force accounts or speeding up the process to contract for public projects. By opting into the California Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act, the ACT, administered by the State Controller's Office, the city will be able to self-perform or expedite bidding on projects under $60,000 and informally bid projects up to $200,000. This greatly reduces the time, effort, and expense associated with bidding projects. There is no cost associated with becoming a participating agency of the Act. Additionally, there are currently about 1,239 public agencies who have opted into the Act and are benefiting from the simplified bidding process. I have an FAQ, bless you. I have an FAQ document outlining areas of concern that I would like to pass out to the council along with my business card that is available on the State Controller's website. I am recommending that the City of Livingston submits a resolution to the State Controller's Office to become a participant of the Act. I am happy to assist the city with any questions they may have pertaining to this matter. Again, thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from the public? At this time, we'll close the citizens' comments. Be moving on to the consent calendar.
And Mayor Pro Tem, I apologize for jumping in again. Just a reminder, items 2 through 10 would normally be under the consent calendar, and a heading would be on there on the consent stating consent calendar. Unfortunately, through the getting the agenda ready for the publication and putting it online, that got taken out. The council can still take on items 2 through 10 all under one motion, subject to any items getting pulled by the council members, any items getting pulled by the request to get pulled by the public, or any items requested to be voted on separately. Just for transparency purposes, if the clerk could just read the items 2 through 10, and then the council can go ahead and open it up, see if there's any public comments on any items or any recusals.
Thank you.
Item number 2, approval of warrant register dated August 6, 2019. Number 3, approval of warrant register dated August 15, 2019. Number 4, denial of claim for damages from Salvino John Amaya. Number 5, resolution authorizing the city manager to file a Regional Surface Transportation Program, RSTP, estimated exchange fund claim form for fiscal year 2018-2019. Item 6, resolution approving the annual local transportation fund, LTF, claim to be filed with the Merced County Association of Governments, MCAG, for fiscal year 2019-2020. Item 7, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Livingston approving a 3-year memorandum of understanding between the City of Livingston and the Livingston Supervisory Employees Unit. Item 8, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Livingston approving a 3-year memorandum of understanding between the City of Livingston and the Livingston Management and Confidential Employees Association. Item 9, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Livingston approving a 3-year memorandum of understanding between the City of Livingston and the ASME Local 2703 District Council 57 on behalf of the Public Works and Parks Employees Unit. Item 10, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Livingston approving a 3-year memorandum of understanding between the City of Livingston and the Livingston Police Officers Association Unit.
Thank you. Council, at this time, do we have any requests to have an item pulled?
Yes, I would like to step out of number 10.
And just for the record, Councilmember Kang is recusing himself from item number 10, which is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Livingston approving a 3-year memorandum of understanding between the City of Livingston and the Livingston Police Officers Association Unit. For the record, the council member does not have any financial conflict on the matter. However, for perception purposes and just for the appearance of impropriety, avoiding any of that, the council member has decided to recuse himself since his brother is part of that union. So the matter would be open for, it would be taken under for a separate vote. So Mayor Pro Tem, the council can make a motion to take the consent calendar items 2 through 9 under a motion if the council considered it.
So at this time, I'll entertain a motion for items number 2 through 9.
Make motion.
Motion by Councilmember Aguilar. Is going to second?
Yes, I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember King. And at this time, can we get a roll call for vote?
Sure. Councilmember Baptista?
Yes.
Councilmember Aguilar?
Yes.
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
And now, Mayor Pro Tem, if the council wanted to make a motion for item number 10 with Councilmember Kang simply recusing himself because it's on the consent calendar, he could stay in the room. However, he would not be voting. And something I forgot for the record, the council member has not been involved in the negotiation of this MOU either.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for item number 10.
Make a motion to approve item number 10.
Motion by Councilmember Aguilar. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Bautista. Can I get a roll call for vote?
Sure. Councilmember Baptista?
Yes.
Councilmember Aguilar?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
And let the record show Councilmember King has recused himself.
Thank you.
3-0.
With that, we'll be moving on to discussion and potential action items. Can you please read number 11?
Sure.
Thank you.
Item number 11, resolution of the City Council of the City of Livingston approving a 3-year contract with F&M Bank for banking services.
And, yeah. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. This is the second meeting where this item is being considered. What I'd like to do for the benefit of those that weren't here at the first meeting is just do a quick presentation down to where the council requested more information at the last meeting, and then we'll discuss that. And we do have representatives from both banks here in the audience, so I'm sure they will be wanting to take a few minutes to speak on the matter. So with that, the item that you have before you is for your consideration. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Brad Grant. I'm the interim finance director for the city of Livingston. Apologize, I should have introduced myself. The item that is before you is the consideration of a resolution approving a 3-year contract with F&M Bank for banking services. The background on this is that, of course, state and local governments use a wide variety of banking services for the deposits, disbursements, and safekeeping of public funds. Prudent procurement practices require the reevaluation of banking services on a periodic basis. In addition, continual changes in technology, treasury management practices, and banking industry structure offer public fund managers opportunities to reevaluate banking services and costs. The Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA, which was founded in 1906, which represents public finance officials throughout the United States and Canada, the associations of more than 20,000 members of federal, state, and local governments are deeply involved in planning, financing, and implementing thousands of governmental operations in each of their jurisdictions. GFOA, of which the city of Livingston is a member, provides best practice recommendations. In this regard, GFOA recommends that governments review their financial services contracts every 5 years and use a competitive process for the procurement of financial services. The current provider of banking services is West America Bank. West America Bank acquired the city of Livingston's accounts not through a competitive process, but rather through the acquisition of county banks' banking operations from the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation in February of 2009. So because of GFOA's best practice recommendation, the amount of time the city's financial services have been provided by West America Bank, and because West America Bank obtained the city's accounts through an acquisition and not a competitive procurement, staff felt it appropriate for a request for a proposal or an RFP to be issued for financial services. So the RFP was posted on the city's website, and 4 banks responded: Chase, F&M Bank, Tri-Counties Bank, and West America Bank. The city manager, the interim finance director, the executive assistant deputy city clerk, and senior accountant were involved in interviews and evaluation criteria, which included the following: conformity to RFP specifications, responsiveness to the RFP, comprehensiveness of services provided, related experience, account analysis, a conversion plan, the charges for the services, service enhancements, and other factors. So at the last meeting, July 16, 2019, the City Council agreed that a letter seeking further information should be sent by the mayor to West America Bank and F&M Bank. The letter contains 6 questions. It's attached in your packet, and the questions focused on pretty much 3 areas. One was the Community Reinvestment Act, or CRA, loans, what kind of loans does the bank do, and then local small business, nonprofit support and development. I'd like to talk just a little bit about community reinvestment because that's kind of made up the majority of the questions that were in the mayor's letter, and maybe a lot of us don't really know what that's about. But the Community Reinvestment Act, which was enacted by Congress in 1977, was intended to encourage depository institutions to help meet credit needs of the communities in which they operate, including low and moderate income neighborhoods consistent with safe and sound banking operations. Now, the CRA, or Community Reinvestment Act, requires that each insured depository's institution record in helping meet the credit needs of its entire community be evaluated periodically, or their practices reviewed. That record is taken into account in considering an institution's application for deposit facilities, including mergers and acquisitions. And the CRA exams are conducted by the federal agencies that are responsible for supervising the depository institutions. So, due to the size of West America Bank and F&M Bank, they are evaluated based on three things under the CRA: their lending, investments, and service. The lending evaluation considers number and amount of loans in the institution's assessment area, the geographic distribution of those loans, including to low and moderate income areas, records of lending, lending-related activities to borrowers of different income levels, and our businesses and farms of different sizes, community development loans, and innovative or flexible lending practices to address the needs of LMI individuals or geographies consistent with safe and sound banking. Those are a lot of words that probably mean a lot to bankers, but to us laymen, probably not that much, but it's very important to the banks. The investment criteria considers the dollar amount of qualified community development investments, innovativeness, and complexity of qualified investments and responsiveness of qualified investments to crediting community development needs. The third thing then is the service evaluation, and that considers the geographic distribution of the retail bank branches, the record of opening and closing bank branches, particularly those that serve the LMI geographies and individuals, the availability and effectiveness of alternative systems for delivering retail banking services in LMI geographies and to LMI individuals. So we took all those words, the examiners come in, and they give an overall CRA rating. So the last four ratings for West America Bank, 3 are satisfactory, 1 is needs to improve. The last 4 ratings for F&M Bank, 3 are outstanding, 1 is satisfactory. If we move on to the loan category now, both banks provide a full range of loans, except West America Bank does not provide home mortgage loans. If we look at the local small business nonprofit support and development, the responses to those questions are attached and probably best responded to by the representatives from the banking firms that are here today. So upon completion of interviews, applying evaluation criteria, and reviewing responses to additional requests, staff recommends a contract for banking services be awarded to F&M Bank. F&M Bank has provided financial services to individuals, families, and businesses in California since 1916. They're locally owned and operated. F&M Bank is headquartered in Lodi, California, and it's a primary operating subsidiary of Farmers and Merchants Bank Corp. With over $3 billion in assets. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or certainly the council has available to them representatives from both banks, West America and F&M, to follow up on the questions that we're wanting to be answered from the last meeting.
Any questions from council?
You have here that West America obtained it in 2006. So from 2006 moving forward, every 5 years you're required to have a 5-year assessment. What happened 5 years ago? Not specifically saying what happened to West America's rating. I'm saying overall, when you did the best practices, what happened then? When you did your, yes, the FR, what is it? So that was required to services contracts every 5 years. So West America, they actually kept the contract. The last if I read this right, it's 5 years ago. So in between, so County Bank, West America continued.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? You good? No, you good? Any questions from or comments from the public or either bank institution?
I never remember doing a RFP for the bank. It's always been West America since they were taken over by, since they took over from County Bank. First of all, I want to say that I haven't had any discussion with any council member or city manager with this item, and I am a customer of Farmers and Merchants, and I just want to say that for the last 20 plus years, my whole family, since we're farmers, we gotten loans, mortgage loans, and auto loans. And I have to say that, to me, they're one of the best banks, if not the best, in California. Like I said, there's different managers that have been there. Well, the one in Hillmar's been the same ones for the last 20 plus years, and my dad has known some of the members for even longer, and they've been nothing but professionals. I go to all their banks locations. I go to, now that I'm in the county, I go to the one on G Street in Merced, the one in Hillmar, the one in Sherlock. They have two locations in Sherlock. I've stopped, like I said earlier, when I looked at the roundabouts, I stopped sometimes in Galt, Lodi, and even in Sacramento. So, like I said, all throughout the process, I've never had any issues. All the employees are professional, so I can't say anything but positive for this bank. And I think the council, if you guys decide to go with Farmers and Merchants, you'll be doing the right call. West America, I know that I have some concerns from public in the past, some customers that, because they don't provide loans or the service. I've never had an account at West America. But, like I said, as mayor, you hear the customers and the constituents. So, like I said, but on behalf of Farmers and Merchants, I'd like to say, like I said, that they've always been professionally, and with us, they're taking care of our business. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I'm Donna Duffy, 1616 Sapphire, and I've never heard of F&M Bank until today, or well, actually until I read the agenda. My question, though, becomes twofold. First of all, West America Bank is right across the street, as far as I know. Is this going to add any issues with the way the city deals with real money, as far as transporting it somewhere? That's my first question. Second is, what's the possibility of having a competitive bank branch in Livingston? We only have one bank. Have to go to Turlock if you want a big bank. And I'm not saying anything bad about any bank, but I think some competition would be good, and I don't know if that's something that can be worked out as part of the arrangement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Duffy. I appreciate the questions. So actually, at the last council meeting, I'll answer the second question first. At the last council meeting, that question was actually posed by our mayor to F&M Bank, and as part of their response, they said yes, they're actually actively looking for real estate here in town to open a bank branch, and as it relates to the first question, as far as all the different criteria that we looked at and handling the funds and stuff, Brad will go over that specific piece so that he gives you the details.
Nowadays, technology makes it real easy to do banking. There's several ways to go about that. One is armored car service. That's really not technology, but that's one way. The other way is banks have what they have now called desktop depositing. They have a scanner machine. It just sits on the desktop. The check comes in. Phew, good funds right there as it goes to the bank. So in the old days, yeah, it was probably an issue. Nowadays, you can really bank pretty much anywhere, you know. Well, the cash, I mean, that comes to an armored car service. And the amount of cash is not gone away, but it certainly is decreasing as more and more people use electronic home banking, you know, that kind of thing. Well, I keep hearing of a commitment if F&M is chosen that they will come to this town. I don't know, but if they didn't, an armored car service does cost some money, but F&M Bank does offer a higher earning rate on compensating balances than West America, so that at the end of the day, less money is used to cover the fees. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other questions or comments for this item?
I have a question. Over here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Ms. Duffy brought up the chain of command and the cash. I understand that, you know, City of Livingston is right across the street. How does that process happen? Are we walking deposits over there? I mean, I know
Right
we
now
don't need
we
an
are.
armored car.
Right now we are, yes.
Okay.
Which is kind of scary.
Okay, any other comments at this time? Go ahead.
Mayor Pro Tem, council and staff. Again, I'm Robert Baker with West America Bank. I'm the Southern Banking Division Manager. I do want to address the recommendation again, as I did last time, and I was somewhat surprised when the letter came out because I'm not sure that that the discussion that we had at last council meeting is exactly what was addressed in the letter that came to us, and I expected more further discussion on it. Brad, Jose, either at this council meeting or at subsequent meetings, and so I'm kind of surprised that we're at this point again without further discussion on the items that I thought that were going to be measured. And I'm sorry the mayor isn't here this evening because I think there were additional concerns that were raised about the investment in Livingston and the citizens of Livingston and services provided to those citizens. And one of the points that I tried to make at the last council meeting was your tax dollars as citizens are invested through city's management into businesses locally. Those businesses create jobs locally. You also have facilities you have to maintain, as well as employees and providing benefits to those employees and career opportunity for those employees. And what we had discussed was the measurement of that against an RFP from somebody who doesn't have those expenditures. So while the earnings credit rate may be slightly higher at F&M, and rates go up and down, and at this time it's slightly higher, in a few months ours could be, rates do move. But the investment for the last 30 years that our financial institution has made in Livingston is unsurpassed. from the time we were Bank of America until we were County Bank and now West America. And to answer your question about a competitive bid, when we were County Bank, I was with County for a decade, there were times when the city did come to us and ask for pricing on certain services that they wanted, and that practice has continued. Now, whether or not the staff went out and bid those against somebody else or looked for competitive pricing, it wasn't done in an RFP format, but certainly they came to us inquiring about pricing on services that were needed. The nice thing about the deposits of the city is that the level of deposits have always offset the service charges. So whether you need an additional service or you don't, you're maintaining enough in deposits right now that whether it's our earnings credit rate or F&M's, they're even. Because even at our earnings credit rate, which is slightly lower than theirs, you're not paying service charges. So it's an apples-to-apples comparison when it comes to cost. There is no added cost. As far as services are concerned, you're right. You have the convenience and the security of a branch across the street. But bigger picture here tonight is services for the citizens. And who has made, I apologize, I know I'm slurring a bit. I just had a wisdom tooth removed, so bear with me if I slur at you. The services that are provided to the citizens are done because we have a major deposit relationship. When a small community does not bank at the local bank, it makes it very difficult for the local institution to continue to provide those services. And I say that by way of saying this is not a huge community. To support multiple banks in this community that could stay profitable would be difficult. Some of you may remember there used to be 2 banks in town. There was a bank called Valleywide. Valleywide did not stay in town. It closed, and you were left with one institution, and that was County Bank. And so at the time that West America acquired County Bank, there was a decision that needed to be made. And that decision was, which communities are we going to serve? Where are we going to stay? And the city of Livingston was one of the communities we chose to make an investment in as West America Bank. That investment far exceeded the FDIC insurance that was allowed. So when West America acquired County Bank, there were many depositors that were non-FDIC insured that West America Bank didn't have to cover, but we did. And so those types of investments to keep a local economy going during a recession are not measured adequately in an RFP. And our 30-year commitment to this community isn't measured in an RFP. And that's what I had asked to be measured. The mayor did ask the question about a branch being opened, and again, I checked again before coming here. No application has been made to the regulatory agencies to open a branch here in Livingston by any other financial institution. I would think that would be a minimum criteria before considering a move. And I would ask council to consider that before they take action. There's no reason to take action at this point. There's no pressing matter in front of you. There's a financial reason compelling council to make the move. There is due diligence, and I applaud that you would go out to bid, but our bid is competitive. And I would hope that with the services we've provided and want to continue to provide for the citizens, that would be taken into account as you make this decision. Thank you. I'm open to answer any other questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name is Jay Columbini. I'm with Farmers and Merchants Bank. Let me introduce, we have some other employees here. Somebody mentioned Ken Olds. He's our longtime Hillmar Senior Vice President, Market Manager in Hillmar. Raise your hand, Ken. Everyone knows him in Hillmar. He's a native there as well. Sitting to his right is Chris Winnick, who is out of our Merced office. And to his right is Roger Brown out of our Hillmar office. And in front here is Gary Erickson, our Senior Vice President in our Turlock office. So just wanted so you can put some names to faces. Let's talk about a couple things here first about the proposal and what makes maybe our proposal different than West America's proposal. And the fact that what was said is correct. If you have analysis and you have more money in there, basically you don't get any benefit of that extra money in there. However, we have a unique product, F&M Bank, where we pay interest on the excess money in there. And so we did a side-by-side comparison for the last 12 months between us and West America's services, and what our normal standard charges are versus West America's charges that they charged over the last 12 months. And even including, if we included the armored car service that would come here as an expense, the city would still be ahead funds because they'd actually be earning interest on that excess funds that they would have in the account. Let's talk about this, what you as a city expect in a bank. One of the things, and the key thing I'm hearing is, the city expects their bank to reinvest back in the community, back in here in the city of Livingston. Now, obviously the primary way they do that is through loans, okay? So, and I can tell you, most banks loan to their deposit ratio. So for every dollar they have on deposit, a bank will lend out anywhere from, typically it's 80 to 90 cents on the dollar, okay? Our current loan to deposit ratio was been running for the last couple years anywhere from probably 83% up to 90%, and that's normal because you get fluctuations, particularly in the ag economy, on loan volumes. And you can verify this information if you go to the Uniform Bank Performance Reports, UBPR, and if you just Google UBPR, you can pull up any bank and look at their financial information and look how much they have in loans and how much they have in deposits and do a quick calculation there. I did that for West America Bank, and for every dollar on deposit that West America has, they're loaning out 25 cents. So we're lending more than 3 times for every dollar on deposit than West America has, and that's bank-wide. They don't have it by individual communities. Also, you want a bank that is not only reinvesting back in loans, but also in the 3 categories as you heard under the Community Reinvestment Act. And the Community Reinvestment Act, as you heard, the last 2 we received an outstanding rating. Now there's 3 parts of that of the Community Reinvestment Act exam, which is the investment, the services, and loans. And so services includes, are your products meeting the needs of your community? Okay, as an example. And the service test is how much are your employees investing back into helping low to moderate income individuals and families, okay? So obviously loans is self-explanatory. Are you making loans to low to moderate income individuals and families and helping those communities, and investments as well. So we receive a rating, and you can look this up also. I gave the link in the letter that I sent to the mayor. I put a link in there, and you can look in there, and you can see the rating for each of the 3 categories and the overall rating for any bank in the United States. And we've received an outstanding rating in each of the 3 categories, plus an overall outstanding rating. There are only 2 banks headquartered in California that received an outstanding rating in all 3 categories and an overall outstanding rating, and we're one of them. So what we give back to the community is second to none. There's no other bank in our market area, because the other bank is not even in our market area, that is giving more back to the communities that we do. We've made an investment. We have a huge investment here in Merced County. Obviously, even though we don't have an office here in Livingston, We do have a substantial loan portfolio amongst people who have Livingston addresses. We have farm loans, business loans, and home loans. Our commitment to Merced County in general, currently we have over $300 million in loans outstanding to Merced County and commitments of over $400 million. Okay. So let's talk about also back to the CRA rating. And if somebody asked if you looked at this question, and since we're kind of doing comparison on Farmers and Merchants Bank and West America Bank. So the question I would have if I were you is, why did West America get a needs to improve on our last CRA rating? And in the letter that was put together, it was obviously indicated on there that they had violation of Section 5A of the Federal Trade Commission Act. Basically, we call that the unfair deceptive acts or practices, UDAP for short. And so kind of, I'll read you under that 5A kind of what that means. An act or practice is unfair where it causes or is likely to cause substantial injury to consumers, cannot be reasonably avoided by consumers, and is not outweighed by countervailing benefits to consumers or to competition. Deceptive practices. An act or practice is deceptive where a representation, omission, or practice misleads or is likely to mislead the consumer. A consumer's interpretation of the representation, omission, or practice is considered reasonable under the circumstances, and the misleading representation, omission, or practice is material. Okay? So I wanted you to understand that because I think, Mrs. Baptista Soto, you're kind of asking questions about the CRA ratings, and so I kind of wanted to clarify that. I think that's might be what you were asking about that, but I'm not positive there. And lastly, under our lending practices, which was indicated in the staff's report, was we do home mortgages. We have done home mortgages here in Livingston, in spite of the fact that we don't have a branch. Our closest branch is in Hilmar. And so we've done home mortgages here. And we retain those mortgages. We don't sell those off. Lastly, let's talk about the branch opening. So first of all, we're honored that the mayor has asked us specifically for us to locate a branch here. That tells us that perhaps the citizens and the businesses and the farms of this community want another bank here. Maybe they need another bank, as somebody said, for competitive purposes. Maybe they need another bank to meet their needs. And we're certainly, this community is right up our alley of all the other communities we serve in this valley. And like I said last time, we have several communities where we're the only bank or one of two banks. And certainly we would be willing to come in here. We said that. We've looked at a couple of locations. This certainly takes time to negotiate these. We have every intention of coming to Livingston, particularly if the contract is awarded to us. It was made clear to us if the contract was awarded to us that we would agree to put a branch here in Livingston. And we're willing to honor that commitment. And I've looked extensively for different properties and things in Livingston myself to see where we could locate. We found a couple of them, and we're actually excited about coming to this community. It fits in a good area where we can certainly meet the needs of this community. So with all that said, I don't want to belabor this any longer. I know it's a difficult decision. But like I say, we're here to help. We want to help this community. And with that, are there any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So what I hear is that you have intention to come to Livingston.
We absolutely do.
Okay, but that's contingent upon a decision that is going to be possibly made. So why Livingston in the first place? I mean, is it to support our community, or is it because gaining,
We have a lot of, first of all, we have a gap. Our nearest offices are in Hillmar and Turlock, and then the one to the south is Merced. So this is an area of our territory where we have a gap. Our bank, and I believe you were here present, so we're the largest agricultural community bank west of the Rockies. And serving these agricultural communities and needs of the communities is exactly what we do day in and day out. And we don't have a large territory. We only go from Sacramento to Merced, Sacramento to Merced. So we don't cover a big area of this valley, yet we're the largest ag bank west of the Rockies among community banks. And that's a big deal to us. And we want to continue, in order for us to continue to grow, you see that the markets that we serve in, we highly saturate those markets. We want to expand. We saw an opportunity here to grow. We've already assisted, and I know, I apologize you weren't here, but we've been assisting the Livingston Community Health Organization for a while now. We just became the bank for the Merced Housing Authority. We're one of the largest contributors to the United Way of Merced, and particularly through our corporate giving that we do. And so we're doing a lot of things in this county, and we want to continue to extend that.
okay, when you mentioned gap, to me, Livingston was built on agriculture, and apparently we've got our county supervisor going to you. So is it a matter of just convenience to, you know, he's from Hillmar, and your nearest branch there is Turlock. So our citizens, you know, are already going to you. You already have your clients. They're going to you.
Here's the thing is there's a lot of other customers that we know that would come to us if we had a bank here in Livingston. Prospective customers. Let's talk about that, prospective customers, number one. Number two is we provide, the services that we provide for community, not just the farms and the businesses, but for the community. This is, well, first of all, you go down the street and there's Atwater. Now, Atwater is, double the size. They probably have a little bit more population on the outskirts, but they have 7 banks there. Livingston has one bank for a town of 14,000 people. You should have. There's room for there's room for others, and I think that maybe there's a lot of your citizens that might not be banking here because of the lack of competition.
Thank you. At this time, okay, we're gonna you got 3 minutes.
I just felt there were a couple of things left hanging there, and I want the citizens of Livingston to know they're served by a high-quality community bank that's dedicated to the community. So when you read a regulation like that out of context, it sounds like there's a violation in there. He didn't mention any violation in there. That's because it's not published. And unfortunately, although we have a satisfactory rating in our lending practices, which is really what he was alluding to, we're not able to, because of regulatory reasons, to disclose the discussions we have with regulators and how they come to their conclusions. So please don't read into his reading of a regulation as to what an offense may have been and the reason that an agency 4 years ago may have rated us in a certain way. The second thing is when you talk about investments in a community, the 90% loan to deposit ratio it is a number that should be of concern if you're putting your deposits there. It's highly leveraged, and when you look at a liquidity standpoint, it doesn't allow a bank who may be headed into a recession, as it appears we may be in the next 24 months, to have a lot of flexibility. So those are things I would love to discuss further with staff. at any time as to why the security of having a bank that's highly liquid would be smart for the citizens to keep their money invested with a bank who's as stable as to have that kind of liquidity. So I just wanted to respond to those two items that were brought up, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, public comments are now closed. Go ahead, we'll have this last one.
Hello, Jose Moran, 945 Parkview Drive, Livingston, California. I just have 3 questions that came up during the presentation. One of them is, what is the potential of amount of fees and income that the chosen bank is looking to make of the services provided to the city? I'm just curious, and how much are we, or are we paying in fees to any particular bank, or that we have paid in the past about? And have we had any problems or issues with, or the city with our current banking agency? And I also heard during the presentation something about Community Reinvestment Act. I think I heard briefly some of the ways that some of the banks are giving back to the community, which is great. That is something that I really believe. And how whoever stays or whoever we end up banking with, how can we get some ideas on how we can give or they can give back to the community, either in supporting some of our sports nonprofits or any other agencies in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be closing public comments now, and staff, can you answer the questions that were asked?
I will respond to the gentleman's question on the cost, the charges for each month. The charges can fluctuate, kind of depending on how many deposits, how many checks are written. So we range from probably the best estimate is about $1,000 to $1,300 a month. And those currently are all covered by interest earned on the compensating balance. No, that's really has nothing to do with the CRA. That's just funds on deposit, earning an amount that they offer.
The question was, how much does the bank earn when they charge us for services?
Well, I'm not privy to that information. I really don't know what their margin is, so I can only tell you what we pay.
Thank you, Councilor. If there's any questions, comments? Okay, at this time, do I have a motion for?
Just a moment. Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem. I know that, Mr. Moran, you had a question about the community service. Both entities were asked to provide a letter indicating the nonprofits and how many hours volunteer. Some of the information that West America had provided gives us an almost extensive list of what they've given to communities, such as community efforts such as the Cops for Kids, Livingston Police Department, Livingston High School, Livingston Reading for Life, all the festivals and parades, as well as community contributing over 711 volunteer hours. Whereas we have F&M, they have a total of 330 hours of qualified community service hours, in which they've contributed to such organizations as the Merced County United Way and the Corporate Giving Campaign. So again, they did provide us a list of organizations or agencies or nonprofits that they help throughout for their efforts in raising funds or giving funds back to their communities.
Thank you. So at this time, all right, is there anyone that would make a motion for item number 11? Council.
Before you, council makes a motion, I just wanted to communicate that, first of all, our mayor would love to have been here, but he couldn't for family reasons. But he has been working really closely with staff. He is supportive of staff's recommendation, and the recommendation is for F&M Bank.
And I'm sorry to jump in, just on the resolution itself, I apologize that it wasn't caught, but the now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Livingston as follows. Slight amendment, changing the number 1 there in order to cover a little more of the action that the council that the recommendation for the council to take. It would now read, number 1, the banking services agreement with F&M Bank is approved in a form substantially attached here too, and there would be now a number 2, the mayor and the city manager are authorized to execute the banking services agreement with F&M in a form approved by the city attorney. So if there is a motion, I would just request that the motion be made with the resolution as amended with the changes read into the record.
Thank you. So at this time, is there anyone that will make a motion for item number 11, Council?
Actually, I want to recommend that we make a decision at a later date, after we discuss everything that we've taken in consideration what West American has to present, farmers and merchants.
Give me a second, so that's a motion.
Do I got a second?
Motion dies for lack of a second.
Motion dies for the lack of second.
Any other motions?
Any other motions?
I'll make it. I'll make a motion approving a 3-year contract with F&M Bank for banking services, as amended with the reading from our legal team.
Do I have a second? I'll second. And can I call for a vote?
Sure. Councilmember Baptista?
No.
Councilmember Aguilar?
Yes.
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1.
Moving on to item number 12.
Item number 12, resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an out-of-boundary service agreement with Livingston Farmers Association for water services and authorizing the city to submit an out-of-boundary service application to LAFCO for the provision of potable water from the city to the Eucalyptus Avenue project, APNS 143-020-007-000 and 143-020-021-000.
Yes. First of all, we have representatives from the Livingston Farmers Association. From the outset, Livingston Farmers Association have been wonderful partners for many, many years. They've decided to move their operations right outside of the city limits, but close enough. As you all know, we actually partake in we share the same water basin and all the different regulatory issues related to that. The state of California, for several years, has actually does not encourage small water systems. So, you can imagine, having a lot of small water systems and all the competing and all the different issues related to that. So when the Livingston Farmers Association decided to move their operations just outside of the town here within a short distance, they approached us and said, would you guys be interested in providing potable water to us? And so we had many different discussions, and once we had all the facts, all the details, and we talked to our engineering team, the LAFCO folks, and took everybody's input. We basically came back and said, if the Livingston Farmers Association pays for designs and installs the actual water line to our specifications, and down the road deeds it back over to the city of Livingston, that we would be open to taking this to council for consideration. And so before you to this evening is a number of things that need to happen. So the next piece is our legal counsel, who will share, and then of course the Livingston Farm Association can share after that. So thank you.
Thanks, Jose. So I think you covered most of it legally. As the city manager brought up, legally the law does allow a jurisdiction to serve entities that are right outside of its borders with what's called an out-of-boundary services agreement. In this case, as the city manager mentioned, the Livingston Farmers Association approached the city, now having a facility here in the city, which they've outgrown, and the area has changed. So now they're moving to right outside of the city, within the county. That is, given the circumstances and given the health and safety issues with the requirement of them having safe potable water, that's why they approached the city of Livingston. Now, the agreement that's attached here does require them to pay for all of the pipeline, the getting the water to them. That's going to be paid by the Livingston Farmers Association and the city's time in order to make that happen. The resolution before the council really has a lot of findings in here, a lot of findings that are good to see here, proving why there's the need to apply for to LAFCO in order to get this out-of-boundary services agreement. Because it's outside of the boundaries of the city, that's why we have to go to LAFCO. The resolution itself authorizes the city manager to enter into the out-of-boundary services agreement with the Livingston Farmers Association in a form approved by the city attorney, and that's what requires them to pay for everything, plus the water use, so they would be paying for the water as well. It also authorizes the city manager to submit an out-of-boundary services application to LAFCO in order to provide this water. Again, that's required by law. Attached is an example of that application. Of course, we'll be working with the Livingston Farmers Association to potentially tweak it a little, depending on LAFCO's requirements. But that's really, I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's kind of the summary. And again, as the city manager mentioned, there are representatives here from Livingston Farmers Association in case the council has any specific questions.
Thank you. At this time, I'm open up for public comment. At this time, I don't see anybody coming up, so we'll be closing public comments. And council, do you have any questions or comments? This time, entertain a motion for item number 12. Count. Did you? Okay.
I have no question.
Go ahead.
I'll make the motion. I have to read it. Okay. Make motion authorizing the city manager to execute an out-of-boundary service agreement with the Livingston Farmers Association for water services, and authoring the city to submit an out-of-boundary service application to LAFCO for the provision of portable water from the city to the Eucalyptus Avenue project.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Council Member Bautista. Second. So can we take a roll call vote?
Sure. Councilmember Baptista?
Yes.
Councilmember Aguilar?
Yes.
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 13.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Item 13, resolution approving a fire suppression services liability agreement between the City of Livingston and Merced County and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement.
Mayor Pro Tem, just for the record, I'll be recusing myself from this item due to I'm being a volunteer firefighter.
Thank you. city manager.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. So we have representatives from CAL FIRE here, but in essence, what this specific agreement's going to do that everybody's been asking for and wanting is, when can we actually use the Type 6 vehicle that we currently have? So this particular agreement is going to give us that ability, and all of the different equipment or the actual vehicles. There's a two-way street here, and our legal counsel will share a little more detail in it, but it's going to blanket the different vehicles. And I know that Jeremy's probably jumping at the bit to say some words, so please.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of City Council. Jeremy Ron on behalf of Mike Van Lobensel's, the Merced County Fire Chief. I'm your division chief. Correct, City Manager Ramirez and myself, we've met on several occasions on updating the agreement between the City of Livingston and Merced County that goes back to the early 90s. And one of the components that both of us discovered in there was there's some pretty old language. And this language before you today is just to hopefully clean it up in the rare event something may happen to the city equipment or the county equipment with county personnel or CAL FIRE personnel operating your city-owned equipment. So I'm here if you have any specific questions for us. But we look forward to upgrading or updating our agreement from back in the 90s. It's time to get that updated as well, and this is a small piece of it. So thank you.
And by the way, our mayor has been very actively involved in this particular item as well, and is very supportive. So thank you.
Thank you. This item will be now open to the public for any comments or questions. Okay, it'll be now closed. I don't see anybody coming up. So for item number 13 for council, do we have any questions, comments? So I will entertain a motion for item number 13 from council.
I'll make a motion for the resolution approving the fire suppression services liability agreement between the City of Livingston and Merced County and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement.
Do you have a second?
Yes, I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember King. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Councilmember Baptista?
Yes.
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0, and let the record show that Councilmember Aguilar has recused himself.
Thank you.
Item 14,
Just
resolution.
stand by.
If you can hold on one moment.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
So, Councilmember Aguilar is back at 9:41.
Item 14, resolution approving an amendment to an agreement with Govea Engineering Incorporated to extend the agreement for an additional 3 years and authorizing the city manager to execute amendment.
Thank you very much. We've been working with Govea Engineering since 2013. This would be the second amendment, adding another 3 years to the contract. As you all know, our city engineer is currently working on several of the wells in town. We're also addressing the Winton Parkway widening. We're working on the Hammond and Campbell final intersection. We're working on the roundabout here in town. So he's actively involved in a number of different projects, community development projects in town. So what staff is recommending is extending his services for another 3 years.
Thank you. This time, open up for public comment. Since I don't see anybody coming up at this time, public comments are now closed. Council, do we have any questions or comments? So at this time, I'll entertain a motion for item number 14.
Okay, I'll make a motion approving an amendment to an agreement with our engineering to extend the agreement for an additional 3 years and authorizing the city manager to execute amendment.
Motion by Councilmember Aguilar. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Corporal Sorry, Councilmember Bautista. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Councilmember Baptista?
Yes.
Councilmember Aguilar?
Yes.
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. And that would conclude our meeting today. Thank you guys for coming.
And just for the record, we're going to go back to closed session. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, it was continued to the end of the regular meeting.
Okay.